Picture this. You're in the theatre watching a 3-hour-long historical epic. It's been full of thrills. However, right now we're 2 hours in and it's a heavy dialogue scene. Sure, it might be important for the narrative, but there's nothing super exciting about what's happening. You start to notice that your lips feel dry. It's been a while since you've had a drink of water. Maybe I should stretch my legs a bit and go to the toilet. But the final act is coming up. What if I miss a special moment? Everyone's been there, right? As much as we all love the world of cinema, sitting down to watch a film longer than 2 hours can feel like a big commitment. Luckily, there's a solution. The intermission. Recently I watched The Brutalist in cinemas, and there was a 15-minute break purposely built halfway into the film. I loved this, as it gave me time to grab lunch, go to the toilet, and reflect on what I had already seen. Sadly, intermissions aren't commonplace anymore, but there once was a time where they were. What happened? Let's explore their history to find out. From there, we will discuss how intermissions can improve the cinematic experience. The intermission has existed in plays, operas, and theatre productions long before the emergence of cinema. However, their inclusion in film was not originally for creative purposes. Instead, it was due to limitations in technology. In the early days of silent movies, film reels were limited in size and length. This meant that longer pictures required an intermission so the projectionists could physically change the reels used. Also, before you ask why they didn't just make the reels longer, consider their weight. People had to physically carry these from storage to projection rooms, so they had to be small enough for a person to lift. Of course, technology improved, and by the time talking pictures had emerged in the 1930s, an intermission was no longer required to change reels. Instead, projectionists could attach the ends together at the right time to avoid interrupting the movie. This is why older films sometimes have dots in the corner at specific times, as it indicates to the projectionist that a changeover is coming up. Despite this, the industry found other uses for the intermission. Drive-in theaters were very popular in 1950s America. Since these businesses relied a lot on selling snacks and drinks to maximize their profits, just about every movie shown had an intermission. In fact, these were basically advertisements. Let's all go to the lobby. And effective ones too. This jingle's been stuck in my head the entire time I've been editing this video. Intermissions were mandatory again around this time for 3D films too. Because they used 2 projectors, it was almost impossible to change reels simultaneously. Hence, a break in the picture was needed again. Eventually, we would get projectors that could do this automatically, ending the logistical problems. Despite this, the intermission didn't go away. In fact, it was more popular than ever during the 60s and early 70s. The difference now, however, was instead of their purpose being logistical or profitable, they were a creative tool used by directors. This was around the time much longer films started being produced, pushing the 3-hour mark. Stanley Kubrick was notorious for having intermissions in his movies like Spartacus and 2001: A Space Odyssey. Some more examples from other directors include Lawrence of Arabia and Cleopatra. We will discuss what makes for a good intermission in the next part, however I will briefly mention Barry Lyndon as a great example. The film is broken up into 2 very distinct sections, one about his rise into high society and one about his downfall. Given the length and symmetry of the film, having an intermission right in the middle feels quite natural. Sadly, this period didn't last. Eventually, the intermission was phased out in the West as cinemas wanted a higher volume of films shown per day to maximize profit. This is why a lot of popular movies until recently have been under 2 hours, as you can fit more screenings per day. Even if it's only 1 extra, that adds up over the course of a month. Fun fact, while researching this video, I actually found out that India still does intermissions for just about all their films. It's for the same reason as drive-ins during the 50s, as theaters make lots of money from selling snacks and drinks. So Hollywood has decided we don't need the intermission anymore. However, this isn't the end of the story. If the Brutalists can have one and still do so well, why don't we bring them back? Okay, technically this isn't a proper intermission as I'm still talking to you, of course, but I want to take this opportunity to ask you a question. What's the last film you watched with an intermission? Ooh, right in the camera, ooh. It doesn't have to be in theaters, but bonus points if it is. Let me know in the comments below, as I'd love to hear about all your cinematic experiences. Anyways, break time's over. Let's move on to part 2. Like the 60s and 70s, long historical epics have been making a comeback. In the past few years alone, we have gotten Oppenheimer, Napoleon, and Killers of the Flower Moon. Despite the rise of streaming, many have been craving the cinematic experience and hence want to see longer movies. Because of this, there's been lengthy discussions online about whether we should bring back intermissions. While I thought Killers of the Flower Moon was fantastic, many were put off by the 206-minute runtime. Some theaters started putting an intermission partway through the film against director Martin Scorsese's will. When interviewed by the Hindustan Times, he had this to say: "People say it's 3 hours, but come on, you can sit in front of the TV and watch something for 5 hours. Give cinema some respect." And he's not wrong. The thing is, while I get that it's a long watch, an intermission is not appropriate for this film. It is not entertainment, but a dark depiction of the reality that the Osage people went through. The bleakness and sorrow you feel while watching is the point. Martin Scorsese doesn't want to give you room to breathe, which is why there's no intermission despite the 3.5-hour runtime. So why do I still suggest that they should make a comeback? Well, while not appropriate for every film, intermissions can still be a great tool for some. On a fundamental level, having a pause in the picture breaks the audience's immersion. For 10 to 15 minutes, they are transported back into the real world before hopping back into movie land. Hence, there is one defining criteria for whether a film should have an intermission. Does it still work even if there is a break in immersion? For Killers of the Flower Moon, the answer is no. Martin Scorsese's intention is to fill you with dread and never break away from the evil that pervades America. For The Brutalist, however, the answer is a resounding yes. As a side note, I am aware of the controversy surrounding this film due to its use of generative AI. I do not agree at all with the methods used, however, this is definitely a topic for another video. Let me know in the comments below if you would like me to cover the Brutalist's use of AI, and how studio executives are trying to normalize it in the industry. Like I mentioned earlier, my experience watching this film in a cinema was made so much better thanks to the intermission. Without spoiling the movie, here are a few reasons why it ends up being so effective. First and most obvious is giving the audience room to breathe. A 3-hour and 35-minute runtime is no joke for most people, especially since that's doubled the length of a typical blockbuster feature. Having a 15-minute break is great for allowing viewers the opportunity to go to the toilet, grab a quick bite of food, and have a think about what's already happened. The screening I went to started around about 11:30 in the morning, so I used the brief intermission to get some sushi for lunch. Without it, I would have been just starving during the second half and unable to fully enjoy the cinematic experience. However, the intermission isn't just there for audience relief. It's actually an important part of the screenplay and narrative itself. The end of part 1 is a huge turning point, as Laszlo's wife, Erzsébet, can finally immigrate to America and join her husband. She finds a photo of their wedding, which is displayed with a timer counting down the 15-minute break. This is actually the first time we ever see Erzsébet's face, having only heard her voice through letters up until this point. As part 2 immediately begins with her arrival, it almost feels like the intermission itself is the time she takes to travel all the way from Europe. In addition, both parts are extremely different from a tonal standpoint. While the first half is methodical, grandiose, and traditional in style, the latter half is quite shocking and very fast-paced. Without an intermission, switching between these two would be extremely jarring for viewers, and make it much more difficult to comprehend the larger ideas and themes at play. Finally, the short break gives us the opportunity to reflect on what we've already seen. Part 1 lays out all the puzzle pieces we need, and Part 2 fits them together to conclude the narrative. By having the intermission, it gives us time to try and brainstorm what we think will happen. Even though I was completely wrong in guessing the second half, the fact that the movie allows us a chance to do this makes for a more memorable viewing experience. The genius of the Brutalist's intermission is that it's multifaceted. Rather than merely acting as a break, it also functions as part of the narrative itself. So to recap, should the intermission make a comeback? I think the answer is yes, but only as a deliberate creative choice made by film directors themselves. Intermissions break the audience's immersion for a brief period of time, so they are only ever appropriate when this doesn't ruin the theatrical experience. In fact, they can even be used as a storytelling device, as seen earlier with The Brutalist. A short break works best when it aligns with the director's goals of what they want their cinematic experience to be. As we continue to get longer films, pushing the boundaries of what cinema can do, audiences everywhere will appreciate the reintroduction of intermissions. Let's hope that The Brutalist can kickstart this trend again. Hopefully you've enjoyed this breakdown as much as I've had fun making it. Since you've made it this far, please be sure to give me a like. Subscribe for more, and let me know your thoughts down below in the comments.